morning. Good morning, good morning, morning. So I made a realization this week. You see, the song that we were just hearing during that video is It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year. And I've probably heard that song 1,000 times. And I've sung it a bunch of times at Christmas parties or whatever. And I realized something this week. There's a line that I've always thought was a little weird, like dark and creepy. And I was always like, man, Andy Williams is a weird guy. It's like, there'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. And even the music gets like harmonic minor and like dark. And I realized this week that it's actually not that weird. If you've ever read, watched a movie or a performance of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, you know that there's this character, Ebenezer Scrooge, who is visited by the ghost of his former partner, Jacob Marley, who even warns him there's gonna be 3 more ghosts coming your way. The ghost of Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future. And I was like, oh, so maybe Andy Williams isn't a weirdo, I'm just a dope, and we've been doing this all along. And if you happen to like A Christmas Carol, maybe it's one of those things that make this time of year the most wonderful time of all. And that's what we're talking about in this series. We're talking about what actually makes Christmas wonderful. What is it that makes this the most happiest time of the year? If you are into the aesthetics of Christmas, that's like a whole series of things that are worth celebrating and enjoying. I mean, we love the way Christmas looks. We love the lights, the red and greens. People start decorating the inside and the outside of their houses. Now there's trees in the front yard and inside the living room, which is totally weird. People love all of the ways that Christmas sounds, Christmas music, and jingle bells, sleigh bells, things we don't hear throughout the year except around Christmas time. There's countless songs covered by countless artists celebrating Christmas and Christmas time. People love the way Christmas smells, sugar cookies baking in the oven, roasts getting, ready for Christmas dinner, cinnamon. Cinnamon's a big thing around Christmas. Not sure why, but it's delicious. Anyway, there's all of these things. Christmas movies, Christmas this and that. People love the aesthetics of Christmas. But there's another layer. There's like a deeper level to all of the reasons why Christmas is so wonderful. And you see these things on greeting cards that you might get in the mail. I literally got one this week that said, it was a family photo, right? So it was like wife, husband, their 3 kids, and they're like in a field, and it just says, peace on earth. Like, peace. Sometimes you'll see ones that say, joy to the world, there's joy, or hope has come, or this is the season of love. So there's joy, hope, peace, love, these themes, these overarching ideas that are supposed to be about Christmas. But sometimes we don't feel it. Sometimes that joy, hope, peace, and love, it eludes us. And sometimes it's worse than that. We start to feel like my friend Charlie Brown. And have you ever seen a Charlie Brown Christmas? It opens up with this incredible, like, melancholy jazz music. The animation shows that there's snow falling in this village, in this town. There's kids ice skating, having a fantastic time, just playing, and it's just awesome, right? And it pans over to Charlie Brown. And he's not into it. He's sad and upset. And he turns to his friend Linus and he says this, I think there must be something wrong with me, Linus. Christmas is coming, but I'm not happy. I don't feel the way I'm supposed to feel. I just don't understand Christmas, I guess. Have you ever been this way before? He continues. I like getting presents. I like sending Christmas cards. I like decorating trees and all that. But I'm still not happy. I always end up feeling depressed. And he's pouring his heart out to his buddy Linus. He's like, look, I'm looking at all that's going on, but I'm just not there. I know I'm supposed to feel these things. I know that people expect everyone to feel the joy, the love, the kindness, the warmth, and be into all that's going on around Christmas. I'm just not there. And Linus, his best friend, is just there for Charlie Brown, and he says this, Charlie Brown, you're the only person I know who can take a wonderful season like Christmas and turn it into a problem. I don't know how many people you know named Linus, but if they're a therapist, I would avoid said therapist. All right. All silliness aside, there are times where we do, maybe not feel like, actually we probably do feel this way towards people who are problematic or something, but there are times when things seem to be going great. You look around and it looks pretty good. It looks awesome, and it's just not there. It feels like hope, joy, peace, love are abstract ideas just kind of floating around, and they're just not in here. You can see other people are digging it. They're getting it. They're feeling it. And you're like, is something up with me? Is something wrong with me? Have I been disqualified from Christmas? Did I offend Santa? Did I do something wrong here? And you kind of want to find, like, is there a way back to these things? Can I return or ever have a sense of joy? I want the merry back in Merry Christmas. I want to feel like there's something good around the corner. I want that kind of hope. I want peace. I want stillness and tranquility and calm. I want to feel the love. But right now, it's not there. And that's why we're doing the series. We're trying to figure out, how do we get back to having those things, of having joy, having peace, having hope, and feeling the love. In week 1, Lou talked about this one, joy. He talked about joy. And he gave us 2 practices that if we implement, we can get back to having joy in our lives. He said that we must practice the following: gratitude and generosity. That is, we must see the good, that's gratitude. We must see the good that's here right now. Even if it isn't the way we all want it to be, there is good to be seen and to be appreciated. And then we want to look to be generous. We look to give. We find opportunities to give. And if we do those things, we'll have joy. And in week 2, last week, he talked about hope. Hope. This sense of longing, yearning, desire, anticipation, hoping that something good is around the corner. And what he said is, if you lack hope in this season, what you can do is you can look to the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus. There were a lot of times where her story seemed really, really up, and then it was very, very low. And throughout her story, what she did was she clung to a promise. She clung is a word? Sorry, English teachers that I had throughout my entire life. She clanged to a promise. Clunked, that's what it is. All right, she clinged to a promise, right? She heard a promise from God, and she's like, you know what? I'm gonna base all that I trust in on that promise. And what she found is that she could have confidence in that God would come through. Not necessarily how he would come through, not necessarily how, like in the way that she would want, but if God promised it, she could hold on to that. And it gave her hope, and it carried her through her life. Now this week, I want to talk about this word, peace. Peace is one of those things that, again, around Christmas time, we say them a lot. They appear on Christmas cards. We hear things like, peace on earth, goodwill towards men. That's one of the phrases we hear when it comes around Christmas time, which is something the angels were saying after they visited the shepherds. Peace on earth. We hear that Jesus is, maybe you've heard this before, the Prince of Peace. We're not really sure what that means. And then we sing songs that have the word peace in it, like, sleep in heavenly peace. Yes, that's where we're going. Peace. Like, but sometimes we say them so often that it doesn't mean that much. It's like when you use the word awesome for everything. Like, oh, this was so awesome. Really? It's a bag of chips. Like, the Grand Canyon is awesome. Are the chips awesome too? When you eat them at the Grand Canyon, right? It's like that peace sometimes loses its impact, its meaning. It's like you don't feel like you really understand. Sometimes when it comes to Christmas and we talk about these things like peace, I'm not sure what it all means. So we want to define these things. We want to give it some terminology and figure out how we can get there. Now, as a kid, I had a version of peace around Christmas time. It was typically when it had snowed, or is currently snowing, still snowing, and I would go out with my brothers and my neighborhood friends, and we would run around, build snowmen, try to sled, throw snowballs at each other, whatever, and eventually, it's starting to get a little dark out, but like the sky's kind of bright because of the way the light reflects off the snow, and we're exhausted, and we just like plop down in the snow, and the snow's still like falling, but like hitting us in the face, and we're just like, that for me was peace. until my parents called us into the house, and then we had to go in and get ready for bed. But like, that was peaceful. Now if I do that, if I lay down in the snow when it's coming down and hit me in the face, all I'm going to be thinking about is, I got to clear out the cars. Like, I got to get the snow off my driveway. There's just too many things. I'm like, I can't be laying here. I got too much to do. So now my version of peace around Christmas is very different. It's December 24th. It's in the evening. It's after all of the church services are done. We don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm home. There's Christmas music on in the background. Maybe a little Josh Groban or Bette Midler, if you're into that kind of thing. That guy over there, yep. I see you. You know, the kids are in bed. They're excited. They can't wait for the next morning. They're asleep, though. The presents are purchased, beautifully wrapped, under the tree, because my wife did it, not me. And, like, it's just, for a moment, everything is just right. Everything's in its right place. Things are the way we would wanted them to be. Finally, after all of the busyness, after all of the everything, after all the church services, after all of the stuff, it's cool. I'm feeling the peace. I'm feeling the calm. And I say, right now, it's all good. But the problem is how easily shattered that peace is. If I hear my kids' footsteps come down the hall, I will lose it. Go to bed. Like, immediately, my peace is disrupted. Okay, no joke. So I was working on this message earlier this week, and I was home. The kids happened to be off from school because of something going on with the district, like conference days or something. And I'm writing on my iPad with an Apple Pencil thing, and my kid, my daughter Amelia comes over. She's like, "Daddy, can I draw?" I'm like, "You know what? This is perfect. I'll have a quick potty break, and then I'll come back to working on this." And here, I set it up. She can draw. In the minute and a half that I leave and come back, Amelia and my son Nathan broke the Apple Pencil. I know. I was so mad. Like, peace went out the window, and I was so ticked off. I was like, are you kidding? Like, I just was not feeling the peace in that moment. I was very not mature, and I am sorry, children, if you're watching. I do love you. Just stop breaking my stuff. But I literally was like, oh my gosh, how sad is it? I'm writing about peace, and immediately, like, one thing happens, and it wasn't like they were trying to break it, I think, but my peace was gone. Peace is so easily interrupted. I'm not sure what your version of peace looks like, what peace looks like for your life, but all we have to do is flip on any news channel, doesn't matter which one, and immediately they're gonna tell you everything that's going on that's terrible. Worse yet, if you flip on local news, they'll tell you the worst things that are happening right around the corner, like close to your house, where you live. Or think about the way the financial thing is going on in our country, where inflation's going up, everything is expensive. Gasoline, oil, food, life. It's just expensive. And it's like, how am I gonna make this work? For some of us, that is very, very unsettling for us. Like, when we think about our financial situation and jobs and trying to make sure that we're okay and we can keep it all afloat and we've got bills to pay and this is coming up and then we're supposed to buy presents for people, like, how am I supposed to make all this work? Our peace is easily disrupted. Or you think about the relationships you either want or you have in your life. You're hoping that, God, you know what? I just want a girlfriend. I just want a boyfriend. I want somebody that I can see a future with. That's a version of peace for you. Or maybe your life at home isn't the way you want it to be. Things are kind of rough. Things are kind of difficult. There's tension. There's flare-ups. And you're just like, you know what? If we could just have a little bit of understanding, maybe I could find some peace. But it doesn't last. It's fragile. It's temporary. Because something happens and all of a sudden it's gone. The peace is only there for a moment. What we ultimately want is a long-lasting, a real, rock-solid peace that isn't determined by circumstance. It's there all the time. So what is this peace that's offered at Christmas? What does it mean that Jesus is the Prince of Peace? What does it mean that there could be peace on earth, or we could somehow sleep in heavenly peace? What does all of this look like? And how can we get there? How can we have this for ourselves? Even the ancient Israelites, going back now thousands of years, the people who felt like God was on their side, like they were God's people, had a version of peace that was in fact temporary and fragile. And they were chasing it. They used a term, shalom. You've probably heard this phrase before. It's become like a greeting, like when you say like peace be with you or something, like that's a similar idea, like shalom. It's their greeting, but it has this idea of peace and prosperity and wholeness and well-being. And for them, they experienced a time of peace. You see, at first, the nation of Israel, we're going back now like 4,000 years, Abraham was selected by God to like be the vessel of his goodness to the world. And while there was trouble, he still listened to God, and eventually their family grew, their nation grew. He had sons and children, it grew, and finally those people were like, you know what we need? Like we're so numerous now, we actually need a king. Like we've been operating without one, and we look around, we see that every other nation in this world, they have a king and a kingdom. We're just like a people group, and whatever. So they eventually got a king, and for a while, it was really, really good, especially when David was the king of Israel. Like it was the golden age for the kingdom of Israel. They were like the nation of nations. They were the kingdom of kingdoms on the planet at that point. They had the society, they had the leader who was kind and good, but most importantly, they had an army. They had a military to be feared. They were numerous. So whenever like people would, other people groups or nations or kingdoms would come their way, they could just destroy their enemies relatively easily. And that, for them, was how they had peace. But it was fragile. It was temporary. And they lost it. Because eventually they were overrun. And they lost their top status. And things got bad. Even so much so that the temple, their place of worship, was destroyed. They were a scattered and broken people. And they longed for, and they prayed for, and they hoped that God would give them a deliverer, a Messiah. The anointed one is what it means. Somebody chosen by God to redeem and rescue their nation. What they really wanted was a military leader. They wanted somebody to rally the troops, to like bring all of Israel back together so they could then have the might to defeat their enemies and once again be the top nation. But just like our own versions of peace, that's only temporary. And it's fragile because if another nation rises up that's bigger, that's stronger, their peace is gone. But they longed for it for so long that literally when Jesus showed up on the planet, most of the people of Israel totally missed Jesus. They missed it. Jesus was supposed to bring peace on earth. He was the Prince of Peace, which is from a scripture that they all knew. It was from like Isaiah, this prophet who's like, God will give us someone. He'll be the Prince of Peace. But they were looking for their version for so long, which even wasn't the real, it was fragile and temporary, that they missed out on the gift. They missed out on Jesus himself. So then what is? What is this real peace? What does peace look like? There's so many things that you and I would wish for. But if we stop and think about them, the problem is, even though things might feel just right or all good, it's only for a time until it's not just right, when things aren't all good. There's this passage in the book of Romans. It's found in the New Testament. It's a very short sentence, but it has a ton of meaning, and I think it answers this question succinctly and perfectly. But there's a lot of Christian jargon, there's a lot of theological wordage in this sentence, and I don't want us to miss the meaning for all of the technical terms. So we're going to go through it slowly. The verse is found in Romans 5, verse 1. It's a letter written by the Apostle Paul. He was one of the first believers in the first century. He showed up pretty much after Jesus had died on the cross, was crucified, after he had died and was resurrected, after he was back. Paul wrote this letter explaining pretty much how he felt and what he believed about Jesus to these people in Rome. And we're going to pick up here in the 5th chapter of his letter, and it starts very simply like this. Therefore. Now, if you ever see a therefore in Scripture, What's happening is somebody's making some kind of like concluding statement. They're like going, you better pay attention to this. And we were, like I had mentioned, we're 5 chapters in. He's been arguing and building a case for something for like 2 or 3 chapters, and he's like, please don't miss the following. Here's the thing. Here's what I want you to know. And he says this. Since we have been justified, I want to pause here for a moment. Have you ever been in an argument with someone? Probably. No, have you ever been accused of acting irrationally or doing something that seems like out of your character? It's just not natural for you, and now you have to like defend yourself or explain yourself as to why you did what you did? You know, like let's say you flipped out on a stranger for some reason. People are like, whoa, take it easy. And then you start like, you don't know what this person did. Like, I have every right to feel the way that I feel, to do what I just did. You're not aware. Like, I'm giving you all the reasons why what I just did was fine. I'm okay. Like, I'm justified in my behavior, right? What you're doing is you're making a case for yourself. You're defending yourself. You're representing yourself because someone's either accusing you or you got to explain your situation. That's essentially what justification is. And it's very similar in this case, except the other party is God. It's that we have to make a case before God to defend ourselves, to explain ourselves, to make a case for ourselves, that we might be good, that we might be righteous in God's eyes, to use another Christian theological word. So what's happening here is Paul's like, look, the case has been made, and God sees you as good, as righteous. You don't have to try to convince him that you're okay. He's cool with you. If you ever felt like you're like, I'm not sure where I stand with God, Paul's saying, no, you don't have to worry about that anymore. But how? Why, Paul? How is that possible? And he says, through faith. Now, what is going on in this one clause here is Paul, again, he's been writing for a bit, but he's basically summing up all that Jesus did in the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He's like, you and I, have nothing to worry about when it comes to our standing with God because of what we can believe. That is, if you were to place your faith, your trust in Jesus, that Jesus is who he said he is, that he did what he said he would do, you're good. In God's eyes, you are fine. There's nothing to worry about. Well, Paul, are you saying that I have to do anything? No. You don't have to do anything. What you need to do is place your faith in Jesus. Because if you can believe that Jesus has the ability to make you whole, clean, good, righteous, whatever the term that you want to use, if you believe that Jesus has that ability, then he's already done it and you're good. By placing your faith in him, you're made right in God's eyes. Okay. What does that do for me, Paul? What is the benefit of all of this? What happens when I place my trust in this guy, Jesus? That he is the Son of God. That he can restore me in God's eyes. I get the right standing. I'm justified. Okay, but what does that do for me? This. We have peace with God. That there is a creator in heaven who looks at you and goes, you and I, we're cool. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to fight. You don't have to strive. You don't have to make the case. You don't have to do any of those things. All the lawyers and the jurors have left the courtroom. The lights are shut off. The door is closed. You're good. You're okay. God in heaven looks at you and goes, this one's mine. You're one of mine. The courtroom is empty. There's no more representing yourself. If you go through life thinking, I just don't know where I stand with God, so I'm gonna try praying, I'm gonna try reading the Bible, I'm gonna try going to church, I'm gonna do these things, thinking it's gonna score you points with God. You don't have to. You don't have to. He looks at you and goes, you're my kid, you're my son, you're my daughter. but not because of anything you've done. Don't misunderstand that like you've earned this for yourselves, that you've somehow proven yourself good. And Paul shows us that. He says, this is all happening because it was through our Lord Jesus Christ. This peace that is given to us, that we can have because of our faith in Jesus, can't be robbed because we didn't make it for ourselves. It's not fragile. It's not temporary. It's real, rock solid, and long-lasting because it was established by someone else entirely. Jesus did for us what we could not do for ourselves, and now we have peace with God. There's nothing to prove. There's nothing to earn because he's done it all for us. Now, you might be thinking, okay, great, that sounds lovely, except that I don't know what I believe. I'm not sure if this Jesus thing is real. I'm not sure if God is real. I don't know where I stand, not with God, but with my own beliefs and all this stuff. And if you're here, if that's you, I'm glad you're here. And I want you to like journey with me just a little bit, because what we're describing here is essentially like the gospel. The idea that there's this God who created everything, who set up the universe and wrote all the rules of physics so that this whole universe would spin and do all that it's doing. But he also created you and I, and he looks at you and goes, you know what? I want you to be moral. I want you to be upright. I want you to do good, but you're failing. And if we're real with ourselves, we know that we are. We can't even live up to our own standards that we create for ourselves. We look around and we're like, it's ain't going so good for us. And God, in his mercy and his care, goes, you know what? I'm going to make a way for them to be okay. Because I'm watching. They're trying. They're trying to make their way back to me, but it's not working. They cannot get there. So he sends Jesus to this earth to do it for us, to die on a cross, to raise from the dead, thus defeating sin, giving us a right standing with God, and proving that life can be had in this one and then the one to come after. But it's not just a matter of like God's going, you know what, let me just wipe your slate clean so you can start over. It's not a neutral thing after it's done. He's like, it's better than that. It's like, I'm in your corner. I'm rooting for you. I want you to do great. I want your life to be great. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but you can have peace that is not determined by circumstance. It is not fragile. It is long-lasting. It's real. It is rock solid. And what you will find is that this is the good news, that this is the tidings of comfort and joy. When we sing that the angels had these joyous strains and they were prolonged, they would keep singing these songs over and over, it's because of this, that there is peace. There's nothing left to prove. There's nothing to earn, that God made it just right. And when he looks at you, he goes, it's all good. And beyond this, and this is like the bonus that comes with this piece, is that, and you probably have seen this before with certain people. Have you ever known anybody that's like going through what seems like chaos, just utter chaos, and they're not like unaware of how their situation is, but they're like, I'm just trusting that God's got this. I'm trusting that God has got me. And you're like, you know, like everything's on fire right now. Like you're not freaking out. You're like, I'm just trusting that God has this. They have literally a sense of peace amidst the chaos. That spills over from their peace with God, that they don't have to worry about themselves, that ultimately, whether they live or they die, they are in God's hands. I recently saw this with a family that I've known for a number of years. Their kids were in my youth group, and this woman, she got remarried about 4 years ago, and recently her husband passed. And I went to the memorial service in New Jersey, and I finally saw her for the first time in months. But since her husband's death, I didn't message her anything. I was messaging the kids. I was trying to give her some space, and when I saw her, I was like, gave her a big hug and all this stuff. And I was like, what do you even say, right? Like, it's just so hard. So I was like, how are you? And I'm not trying to say that she was in denial about her situation. It was sad, it was terrible, it was horrible. Nobody would want this to be the case. But she's like, I'm okay. And I have no idea what else to be. Not because she was blind to a situation. She saw the horror of it all. She knows, she was experiencing it firsthand. But there was a peace that came from having peace with her Heavenly Father, making peace with God, knowing that when she is looked at by God, that He says she is cool with Him, that they're okay. It gave her peace in the midst of this crazy time in her life. And I think that could be yours too. I think you can have a peace like that. I think that if you were to place your faith in Jesus, if you were to trust Him, that He could do what you and I could not do for ourselves, you will find that there's peace that you can have with God. And it'll push and spill over into other areas of your life. And you'll start to see things a little bit differently while you're hoping that your financial situation changes and this world is nuts and you're looking at it like how things are and you're just like, I just can't make sense of any of it. You'll start to feel differently because ultimately you're in God's hands. When peace looks like, I just need a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or I just want this relationship to change, or I just need to not worry about, when you have peace with God, it will start to creep into other areas in a positive way and change the way you see them. You'll start to see things not because of the temporary and the here and now. You'll see it in a much grander scale, and you'll be like, you know what? I think God does have this. And that is the peace that is offered at Christmas. It's a gift. It is a gift. It's given to you freely. It's our responsibility to embrace it, accept it, and cherish it. And what we'll find is that it's not temporary. It's long-lasting. It's not fragile. It's rock solid. Because the Prince of Peace has made everything just right. And for the first time in a very, very long time, it's all good.